And I wanted to circle back to getting started with 6,000 Donuts because you guys end up forming Dooney Press, right? How does Dooney Press come into to be?
You would have to ask my dad about that, actually. I didn't set it up and I wasn't really involved in like the setting up of Dooney Press. It was more of him setting it up so that he could start publishing. He had earlier books before I started working with him. So he published those and then he just kind of dragged me into it and was like, I have Dooney Press and you're making books, so we could put them through Dooney Press if other people didn't take it up first.
Because I know that you've got your literary agent, so you're working on the traditional side of things as well, right?
Yeah, my unfortunately my agent and I started working together right as COVID hit, so it's been a pretty rocky startup. But I mean, we've been working on a lot of like getting my artwork ready and I'll for me providing her with a lot of work that I've been working on so that she can get the word out there and promote me and stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't need to tell you the pandemic threw a wrench in everything.
Little.
How has that impacted you since you're working from home, and I assume more even during most of the pandemic, or
Yeah, I feel like the pandemic was a little bit of the Kickstarter in it because I did have to find some way to work from home and that's pretty much when I started working on the first Dweedy. So that's when that came out. And then yeah, it just kind of snowballed from there. I guess I just kept doing it.
and you also offer services, right? You do covers and illustrations for hire if esteemed audiences listing. They've already pulled you up online and they're looking over Squashed and Dweedy, and they're thinking, yes, this is exactly the type of illustration that I need for my book. They can get in touch with you and do that, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely open to freelance work as well. I was doing some freelance work before I started working on the books too, before I knew like this is the direction that I wanted to take everything in. So yeah, outside projects are always fun too.
Well, I assume there's going to be a flood of middle grade authors in particular who are going to be reconsidering the independent route now that as we record this, Barnes and Noble has decided only to carry I think that's the top 2% of selling middle grade books for new hardcover debuts. However, that's going to work out.
Mm.
So I'm assuming that will create a flood of authors who have worked hard to craft novels and who realize that they're going to have to get creative and find other ways if Barnes and Noble wants to focus on selling toys instead of books or whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah, I saw that too. I'm noticing it a lot too as I'm trying to get our self-published books into more like local independent stores and things like that, that a lot of them are like, well, there's just self-publishing is so accessible now that there's so many authors that they're putting down guidelines of like, well, you have to meet these certain criterias if you want to sell our books in here, which is fine. But yeah, there's definitely like a boom happening, I think.
Well, hopefully that'll be the rising tide that lifts all ships as more and more people are coming into this by necessity for no other reason. There'll be already we've seen, I think, the acceptance of self-published authors grow, and I assume you've had the experience of you reach out and are, hey, I want to talk to you about my book, and they go, self-published, get out of here, you're not a real writer. I'm assuming you've encountered that once or twice.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, I feel like there's a little bit of like self-published, but especially here in Portland, I feel like people are so supportive of like smaller independent stuff that there's still a lot of people who are like, wow, this is like, I mean, you just made this by yourself and put it out there by yourself. And like, that's really unique and cool. We would love to have it.
I think it's also becoming a little bit more attractive because people who pay attention, I maintain that most readers don't look at who the publisher is, because who cares? That's like the least interesting thing about a book. What's the story? What's available? How am I going to have my entertainment time filled? That's what matters. But people who do look at that, I think, have an expectation that an indie book can do things that a traditionally published book might not be able to, might not venture to. We might get something unusual. We don't usually get to see this type of book because this won't necessarily appeal to the quote unquote typical mainstream audience, but I don't care. It appeals to me, and there's enough of people like me that we can have a whole fan base for this, even if it's, you know, it's not #1 on Amazon this week.
Yeah. And obviously, I have absolutely nothing against traditionally published books. I'd like to have my own traditionally published books. But yeah, I do think that you're right. There's like a certain uniqueness that can come through a lot of self-published books as well. So both is good.
I've been a fan of self-publishing for years, but especially now, as I'm just seeing more and more imploding on some fronts from traditional publishing. It's like, well, are we going to think that maybe reading and books are just over? They had their run. Now we're all going to watch YouTube videos, or is there going to be a more of a boon as the market moves? I think there's always going to be readers. There's always going to be writers. I don't know that there's always going to be physical bookstores, or at least not big chain bookstores.
Yeah, I mean that would be really cool actually, because I definitely see what you're saying. We're like technology is advancing so much. People are like, why would I read a book when I can just watch a movie? And like, I feel like not as many people are reading nearly as much as they used to. But if they can pick up something unique and that is suddenly something new to them and strikes their interest and gets them reading, like that would be cool. I hope I can do that.
Well, hopefully it'll also continue to. This is happening and has been happening, but we'll also expand the network, not of gatekeepers, but of awareness makers. Is that a term? Where do you just reviewers and people who celebrate these types of books that can bring them to the attention of a more mainstream audience and say, hey, these books exist also. I went to a Barnes and Noble just this last weekend. I hadn't been there since before the pandemic. I'd been to a couple of other buy local indie bookstores, but I hadn't been to an actual Barnes and Noble. And when I got there, I realized that the entire back of the store, in fact, I took a picture of it, and it blew my mind. For the entire back of the store was nothing but toys that were all priced $10, $20 above where you could find them online. So it's a great place to browse and then check online to order the cheaper toy. And their book section, at least for the middle grade books, there was one section that was just Harry Potter, and it was 4 or 5 shelves of all the different variations of Harry Potter plus Harry Potter merch. And then there was just a horseshoe for the middle grade books that was about the size of what you might expect to see on a magazine rack at a Kroger or a Walmart. Now, obviously, they had adult books and all the calendars, all the planners. And I thought, well, this is silly. If I want to get middle grade books, why would I come to this chain bookstore that's clearly focused more on selling toys when I could be, you know, I hop on my Kindle, I have access to all the books of the world. So this should hopefully be one of the greatest times that has ever been in the history of humanity to be an author, because the entire world is literally available for you to reach, should you decide that that's the way you want to go, right?
Yeah. And luckily, well, I don't know if it's lucky that a lot of kids are using technology as much as they are now, depending on how you look at it. But I feel like luckily, because there is Kindle and stuff like that, and kids are being raised to use the internet, then hopefully that doesn't hinder them too much, that Barnes and Noble only carries toys because they'll be like, well, I'll just browse all of the books online and they'll buy them maybe even directly from the author or something. Like they'll be able to be connected and find books through the internet just as easily.
Well, I'm extra agitated just because of I know now have the good fortune to have met and encountered so many authors that I know that this decision is going to adversely affect. That I immediately want to take the argument of get rid of these people. They have too much outsized power anyway. By God, let's take all our middle grade author friends and let's go. You don't want us at Barnes and Noble? Great, we'll go elsewhere. But do continue, esteemed audience, to support your local independent bookshops. Because there's absolutely value in having that community there and being able to go there, have authors that come and present. I'm all for bookstores, just not big chain ones that say we're only going to carry 2% of middle grade fiction. That gets under my craw. But